Hello to all my chess fans and students out there. I hope you're all doing well. And for those of my students out there, I hope that you saw my last video on pins. And if you did, I hope it was helpful for you. So today we're going to be talking about forks. Now, a fork is a chess term for essentially a double attack. So a fork in chess is when we can attack two pieces at the same time and our opponent cannot save both pieces. Okay, so we can attack two pieces at the same time and our opponent cannot save both pieces. Okay, so right now I'm on Chess Magnet School. I know that you guys, I've stated the benefits of using this several times, but I will again because it's so important to really get an idea for the type of tactics that exist in chess and really to just get the practice in so that you can find these moves automatically. Now this fork, this tactic that's present here for black, it combines a few ideas. So remember that what we talked about last week. Remember that we talked about pins. Ask yourself, right, I'll just give you a huge hint. There's a pin on board here with this queen. So this queen is pinning this pawn. This pawn cannot capture, right? The pawn cannot capture because the queen is eyeing this king. If the pawn were to capture, it would be moving into check, and that's illegal. Okay? And so keep that in mind because it's crucial to get the move. So go ahead and pause your video and find the fork, the double attack for white here, or for black here. And again, the attack involves the pin on this pawn. Okay? For those that have paused that are still struggling, I'll give you another big hint. The winning move here is with the knight. And if you need a refresher on how the knight moves, remember that the knight moves in an L shape, so we can make a tall L. So up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1 to the left, or up 1 over 2 to the right, up 1 over 2 to the left, which we cannot do because we're on the edge of the board, so we'd run out of board to move to here. Down 1 over to the right, down 1 over to the right, down 2 over to the left, which is impossible in this case, down 2 over to the left, which you can't do because the pawn's there. So that's a quick refresher on the knight. We should all really know how the knight moves. So, knowing how the knight moves, ask yourself, what happens if the knight moves to f4? Well, notice what it's doing here. A knight on f4 checks the king and attacks the queen. And we know that the knight cannot be captured because the pawn that would be capturing the knight is pinned. So we're checking the king, and the king just has to move backwards. And we're going to snatch that queen. So that tactic, again, that tactic involved knowing pins. It involved knowing how the knight moves. And with that little bit of knowledge, we were able to win the queen and pretty much win the game. Black is in a world of trouble here. And we're just going to be crushing. So, go ahead and pause your video and try to find the fork for black here. Try to find the fork for black. Okay? So, here's the way to really look at any chess position, and a way that will be sort of a shortcut to finding moves like this. So, at any point, after every move, we have to ask ourselves, for one, how does the structure change? So let's pretend that let's say that white's last move was to move this rook to d1. So that was white's last move. Now, ask yourself, how has the structure changed? By moving this rook to d1 from f1, so white moved from f1 to d1, how did the structure change? Well, how did this rook moved from a protected square the rook was protected by the king on f1. Now it's going to a square where it's not protected. Okay? And at every moment in a chess game, we should be asking, are there undefended pieces? And in this case, there are. So we asked, the rook moved it to d1. We asked ourselves, how does the structure change? Well, the rook made itself undefended. Can we attack this rook? Well, an attacking move, we could attack the rook with the queen, right? We could attack the rook with the queen. And notice what other piece it would be attacking. It would also be attacking this king, checking the king. And there's not much the king can do except run away. And we're going to be taking that rook. And we're up an entire rook, and we're doing very well. Alright, here's our next position. So, the first thing we ask in any chess position, step 1, are there undefended pieces? So let's look at all of white's pieces. We've got a rook over here, that's protected by a rook and a bishop. We've got a rook here, that's protected by this rook. We've got a knight protected by both rooks. What about this queen? What about this queen? Is she protected? Well, no. But can we use a piece to attack the queen and another piece at the same time? Go ahead and pause your video and find the answer to that. So for those that have paused that are still struggling, we've got another tricky knight fork here. We've got a tricky move with the knight. So the move here is knight to f2. And notice we're checking the king, and what else are we doing? We're attacking that queen. So we're able to just take this queen, and white is lost here. Now, one other thing to note about this position, the reason that this knight fork worked is because we had a queen and a king on light squares, and we had a knight on a light square. Okay? We had a king on a light square, a queen on a light square, and a knight on a light square. Now, when a knight is on a light square, it can only move to dark squares. So this is something really important to know. The knight always attacks the opposite colored square that it is on. So a knight on a light square attacks dark squares. A knight on a dark square attacks light squares. So this move worked because we had a knight on a light square that moved to a dark square that attacks now two pieces on light squares. So the shortcut here is we say, okay, we've got a king on light, a queen on light, and a knight on light. We know the knight can move to a dark square, and when it moves to a dark square, it attacks light squares. And we're taking one of those pieces on light squares. So anytime you have two enemy pieces on the same colored square as your knight, always be thinking, can I make a fork? Can I make a double attack? Now, obviously the knight also needs to be near those two pieces, right? It needs to be near those two pieces. Obviously this knight's on a light square, but it's nowhere near the attack. So we could just like assume right away this knight's not going to be able to do anything special. But this knight is near two pieces on light squares, and it's on a light square itself. So we just move in, and we take that queen. Alright. Next position. Alright, let's do an assessment. Let's ask ourselves, okay, do we have any undefended pieces? Here the answer is no. We've got two rooks defending each other. So the next question is, do we have a double attack? Do we have a king? Do we have two pieces along the same rank, file, or diagonal? Remember, a rank is the horizontal part of the chessboard. So this would be the 8th rank. This would be the 7th rank. We have files, so the A file. We have diagonals, so the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 and 23 and 24 and 25 and 26 and 27 and 28 and 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 and 33 and 34 and 35 and 36 and 37 and 38 and 39 and 40 and 41 and 42 and 43 and 44 and 45 and 46 and 47 and 48 and 49 and 50 and 51 and 52 and 53 and 54 and 55 and 56 and 57 and 58 and 59 and 60 and 61 and 62 and 63 and 64 and 65 and 66 and 67 and 68 and 69 and 70 and 71 and 72 and 73 and 74 and 75 and 76 and 77 and 78 and 79 and 80 and 81 and 82 and 83 and 84 and 85 and 86 the B file, those go up and down. So those are like the columns, the files are the columns, and the ranks are the rows, just so we know our chess terminology. So we can't really double attack along a rank. We can't double attack along a file. Can we make a double attack on a diagonal? Why, yes. We have a bishop that can fork the king and the rook. And remember, the rooks are more valuable than the bishop. So if we take this rook, we're gaining 5 points for 3 points. So let's remember, in any position we look for undefended pieces. In fact, let's use this as a... So we looked at this position, we said, were there any undefended pieces? Well, no. Rooks defend each other. Do we have a knight nearby a king and another piece on a same colored square? No. This knight is out of the game, really, and is nowhere near any sort of forks on the king. Plus, white's pieces are far away from each other, except for these two, but there's no way to fork these with the knight, so that's out. So then step 3, okay, do we have 2 enemy pieces along the same rank or file? Well, in that case, we did, and that's why we were able to win this piece. That's why we were able to win this rook. Alright, let's look at our next position. Alright, so let's ask ourselves, do we have 2 pieces along the same rank or file? No. Or first, let me start with step 1. Step 1, do we have undefended pieces? Yes, we do. Oh, I made a mistake. It's white to move here. It's white to move. So, and truthfully, I don't know the answer to this puzzle yet. I'm actually just going through the steps here, just like you would. So I don't know the move, so I'm going to go through this and solve it, show you how my thought process here. So it's white to move. Do we have undefended pieces? Yes, we do. We have a rook. We have a rook undefended. But, you know, we can't attack the rook on a file. We can't attack the rook along a rank. Can we attack that rook on a diagonal? Well, it's vulnerable along a diagonal. We see that the rook is vulnerable to a bishop attack. And what else is in line on the white square diagonal? Well, it's this king. We have 2 enemy pieces on a light square diagonal, and we have a light squared bishop that can go ahead and attack both pieces. And we're going to snatch that piece. And one thing to note about this position, the only way for white to win this is to advance this pawn to make a queen. So we would need to bring this king back, protect this pawn, and slowly but surely march it up the board and get a queen, because if black at any point took this pawn, it would be a draw, because our bishop is not enough to give checkmate. It is impossible for white to deliver checkmate with just the bishop. So we would be winning here because we're going to use this king to protect this pawn, prevent the black king from taking it, and march it up the board along with the help of this bishop to win the game. Okay. So those are all of the knight forks, or I'm sorry, all of the just forks on Chess Magnet School. Now let's go to Lichess, and I highly encourage everybody to use Lichess. I don't even have an account on Lichess, and I am actually using their their learning module here to get access to these puzzles. So go ahead and pause your video and find the winning move for white here. Okay, for those that pause, that are still struggling, I'll walk you through my thought process. So, step 1, do we have undefended pieces? Yes, we do. We have an undefended queen. And we have a knight here. So, whenever we have a knight near 2 enemy pieces, we ask ourselves, what color square are those pieces on? We have a knight on light, we have a king on light, and a queen on light. And we know that when a knight is on light, it can move to a dark square and attack light square. So, with that, let's see what happens when we move the knight to a dark square. Attacks both the king and the queen, and we're picking up that queen. Alright, this next puzzle is a bit challenging. Okay, we see that we have an undefended piece. You see we have two undefended pieces. We have an undefended queen and an undefended knight. But there's no... Is there a way to attack? I mean, I can't even attack this queen in one move. You know, I could take... And you're probably thinking, well, isn't it good to just take this rook? Like, let's go to the analysis board. Thinking, well, I could just take this rook straight away. I'm winning 5 points and only losing 3 points. So that's good, right? Well, that's fine. But this is not clear. The material here is even, right? Black has a knight, we have a knight. You know, this knight's under attack, so we're going to have to move it somewhere, and then black's going to take this pawn. Black's going to win a pawn, attack our queen. I'm not sure, you know, and then black can just take this pawn. It's like, you know, I wouldn't feel very good about white's chances here, even after taking that rook. But there's a better move here that involves a fork. And this move is tricky. Don't feel bad if you don't get this. I'm really showing this just to show, for one, how cool some of these tactics can be, and also how powerful these ideas can be, and how they all revolve around the similar ideas that arise with knights in this case. So remember, whenever we have a knight on dark, or a knight on the same colored square as two enemy pieces, and it's near those pieces, there might be an opportunity for a fork. So here we see we have a knight on dark, a queen on dark, and a king on light, and a rook on light. Ask yourself, what would happen if this king was on a dark square? Well, let's make a random move. Let's say we move here. Would the king being on this dark square be very helpful? Not really. You know, you could make a check with the queen, but then the king is getting out of dodge, and you know, you could take the rook, but then the king just takes back. Maybe you take this pawn, and you're doing okay. But there's an even faster way to win. What if the king? Let's make a random move here. What if the king decided, oh, I'm just going to move to this, or rather, let's make a different random move. Let's go here. You know, ask yourself, what would happen if the king decided to just move to this square? Well, that would be bad, right? Because now we have a king on dark, a queen on dark, a knight on dark, and we can move to a light square, take a piece, and attack the king and the queen, and we're losing. If you're black, you're losing both of those, and that's bad. So now ask yourself, is there any way we can make this king move to A8, or I'm sorry, H8? Why, yes, there is. We can just give up a queen. And it might seem crazy to do this, but it works. Because when black takes, we're in the same position. We're taking this rook, black moves, we're taking this queen, and now this is winning. Because we're up an entire knight. Black can take if he wants, but we're up a knight, we're up a pawn, we're going to use our knights to take out black's pawns, and we're going to march one of these pawns up the board to victory. And that's much easier winning endgame than it would be if you were just taking that rook. Right? Remember, if we were just taking that rook, let's go back to the analysis board, if we're just taking that rook, that's just not the best. That's just not the best. Because, sure, we can get some tempo on the king and all that, but this is not nearly as clear as it was before, where we took black's best piece away, and we were just up material. Alright, so let's go to the next puzzle. So, step 1, are there undefended pieces? In fact, pause your video and answer that for yourself and try to find the winning move for white. Okay, for those that pause or are still struggling, let's go through the thought process. So, are there undefended pieces? Yes. Two undefended pieces. And notice they're both on the 5th rank, 1 square apart. Can these pieces be attacked? Yes. What piece can attack them? The pawn. Remember, the pawn captures diagonally. We should all know that. The pawn captures diagonally, and what is black to do here? I mean, if black takes the pawn, we're going to take that bishop. And if black moves away, we're going to take that knight. And obviously if black moves the knight, we're going to take that bishop. So anytime you see this where you have two enemy pieces, 1 square apart along the same rank, or you could think of the same row, in this case the 5th rank, or the 5th row, boom, we can move that pawn forward. And we're winning a piece. Let's see what the computer does. And black just moves back, and we just get to win that piece. Okay. Go ahead and pause your video and find the move here. Step 1, do we have undefended pieces? Yes, we do. We have a knight and a bishop undefended. I bet you all see the move now if you didn't before. What did we just say about 2 pieces along the same row, 1 square apart? They might be vulnerable to a pawn fork. And that's what happens. The bishop moves back, we take that knight. Alright. Go ahead and pause your video and find the winning move here. Okay, for those that paused, are still struggling. Step 1, are there undefended pieces? Yes, we have an undefended bishop. Can that bishop be attacked by one of our pieces? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Would that attack only be on the bishop? No. That attack would also be on the king. We have a double attack here with the rook. We're checking the king. King has to move. We're taking the bishop. And it's just a win. Alright. Go ahead and pause your video and find the winning move here. Okay, step 1. Are there undefended pieces? Yes. There's a rook undefended. Do we have a piece that can attack that rook? Yes, we do. We have a bishop. Can we attack that rook in such a way that it attacks 2 pieces? In other words, is that undefended piece in line with another undefended piece? Or a vulnerable piece that can be checked? Yes. Bishop to c5 checks the king and attacks the rook. And there's no way for black to save that rook. Black has to get out of check, and we're picking up that rook. Alright. Pause your video and find the winning move here. Okay. Step 1. Are there undefended pieces? Yes. Which pieces are undefended? Is this knight undefended? No. These knights protect each other. These knights are not undefended. They're defended by each other. What about this rook? Is this rook defended? No. Can we attack this rook along with another vulnerable black piece? Yes. We can check the king and attack that rook. Okay. Now this puzzle, this will be our last puzzle for the day, and it's very tricky. Okay, it's very tricky. It involves the idea of tempo. Now, the idea of tempo in chess means that we make a move that comes with an attack, with a direct attack, and an indirect attack. Okay? So go ahead and pause your video and try to find the move based on what I just told you. So there's a tempo move that comes with a direct attack, along with the threat of another attack. Alright, so let's go to the analysis board. So, the first attacking move we can play here, remember, are there undefended pieces? That's step 1. Yes, we have an undefended rook and an undefended rook here. There's two undefended pieces. Now they're far away from each other, so you might be thinking, how can we make use of this? How can we make use of this? Let's remember how the knight moves, okay? The knight can move forward and attack this rook, and the rook has to move here. There's nothing for black to do other than defend this rook. Obviously, if black does something silly, we can take the rook, and black is really not happy about that. Okay, so black has to defend this rook. So let's say black moves the rook to a square where it's defended by the other rook. Ask yourself, what would white play here? Okay, for those that have paused and are still struggling, what do we have? We have a knight on light, a king on light, and a rook on light. We have a knight on light, a king on light, and a rook on light. Can the knight move to a dark square that attacks two enemy pieces that are on light squares? Why, yes it can. Knight to c7 attacks the king and the rook, and we're going to remember that the king's in check. We can't capture the knight to get out of check. King's going to have to move out of the way, and we're snatching that rook. And remember, this is a good trade for us because knight's worth 3, rook's worth 5. We're up a boatload of pawns here, and it should be very easy for us to get one of these pawns to the end of the board where it makes a queen, and we're going to win. Alright, let's see what the computer does. So we're going to move here. Sure enough, yes, the computer just moves the rook to a square where it's defended, and defends this other rook. We're going to take that rook, and that's the ball game. Okay, I said that was the last puzzle, but I want to show this because it's so cool. Now, this puzzle is very hard, alright? Do not feel bad if you don't get this. This idea is similar to what we showed in the last puzzle where we have a tempo move. Okay, we have a tempo move that attacks a lot of different things. Okay, it attacks a lot of different things, and again, this is very hard to find because, okay, we see for one, we don't have any undefended pieces. Rook's defended by the bishop, knight's defended by the rook, the queen's defended. You know, we don't really have, you know, it's not clear what we can do here. But let's use our knowledge of the knight. Remember, when we had two enemy pieces on the same colored square with a knight also on that same colored square nearby, we can make some ideas. So what, you know, if the knight were to move, say, you know, pretend this pawn wasn't here. Let's pretend this pawn wasn't here. If knight were to move here, what would it be doing? Pretend the pawn's not there, okay? The knight, and even if the pawn's there, the knight is threatening checkmate, and the knight is also threatening to pick up this pawn. Okay? The knight is threatening checkmate because the queen can move in and do the old queen and helper mate. So the queen is threatening to move to f7 to deliver checkmate on the king. This would be checkmate because the queen's protected by the knight, and the king would have nowhere to go. So let's say black just makes a silly move. We're going to deliver checkmate because black has nowhere to go. Black can't capture the queen because the knight's protecting her. But you might be thinking, well, what's stopping black from just taking that, you know, like this isn't a good move, obviously, though, because black can just take this pawn. Well, we always have to ask ourselves, what happens if black takes this pawn? This king is totally corralled by this queen. And if black takes this pawn, we deliver checkmate here. We deliver checkmate because black can't move here because of the bishop, black can't move here because of the queen, or here, or here, or here, because the queen is covering all of these squares. And now the bishop's covering the only retreat square that the king had before. So, okay, so we move the knight there. So we know that, okay, moving the knight there means that We're threatening checkmate, and black can't capture because of that threat. So you might think, okay, but what if black doesn't capture? And could black just get out of harm's way? Well, no, again, because the queen is taking away all the escape squares from the king, right? And in fact, how does black even get out of checkmate, right? Because if black were to move here to attack the queen and also protect this square, we can't deliver checkmate this way, obviously, now, because the bishop could take. Well, ask yourself, what move could black play then? Or, I'm sorry, could white play then? Well, white could just take that bishop. And now the king's going to move. And, once again, white delivers checkmate. King can't move here because of the pawn. Can't move here because of the queen. Can't move back. Can't move here. That's checkmate. So, there's only one move, really, that prolongs the inevitable here. Black actually has to just give up a queen. And we take the queen. Black takes the knight. But once again, we can take that bishop. And, black is just a lot worse here. And, black saved themselves from checkmate. Or did they? Because what's that move? That's checkmate. So no matter what black does here, they're totally lost. They're totally lost because of this really cool idea with the knight. For fun, let's see what the computer plays. So we move the knight, and sure enough, black just moves the queen. Oh, and then they block with the rook. Okay. So in that case, black is doing a little better than how I had it, but all the same, white is winning because white saw that this knight moving here makes multiple threats. And there's just nothing black can do to stop this knight. So, again, don't feel bad if you didn't get that. I didn't show that puzzle because I thought, really this puzzle is even almost beyond my level. It took me 10 minutes of sitting and staring at it to find the move. And in a real game, it would be hard for me to find that move. But we should all recognize the value of a puzzle like this. Because even if we can't see the winning shot right away, and even if you think, I would never be able to find this in a game, it gives us an appreciation for the power of tactics in chess. It shows us how dangerous we could be as chess players if we took the time to really understand these moves, okay? And even if, you only can solve something that's half as hard as this, even if you're only able to solve some of the easier puzzles that we did, or even if you couldn't solve any of them, now you at least know what to look for in a chess position. You at least know, for example, how to analyze whether or not a tactic is on board. You have a stepwise method of deducing whether or not tactics are available. Step 1, are there undefended pieces? Step 2, if there are undefended pieces, are those undefended pieces in line with another piece that can be attacked? Can we use that undefended piece to make a double attack? If we have a knight near two enemy pieces, is that knight on the same colored square as those pieces? And if so, can it make a fork? And if not, can we force our enemy to move one of those pieces to a dark square or a light square so that it can be attacked, it can be vulnerable to a double attack by a knight? So, what I want you guys to come away with is just that stepwise method of analyzing a chessboard. Every time our opponent makes a move, the structure is changed. Okay, every time our opponent makes a move, the structure is changed. And always ask yourself, how did the structure change? Did my opponent introduce any undefended pieces? Did they move a piece from a defended square to an undefended square? Are there ways that I can take advantage of two pieces being in line with each other? Can I make a pin? You know, these are all questions that you should be asking yourself in almost every move, because every move that's made changes the structure. And a lot of times, you know, we take for granted how big that change actually is. You know, if we go back to, you know, let's say in this position, let's say black's last move was to move the queen back. We would say, okay, before the queen wasn't vulnerable. How about now? We would say, okay, well, the queen moved to a light square. Well, the king's also on a light square. Our knight's also on a light square. Shoot, can we make a fork? Yes, we can. And even if you didn't see this right away, you could deduce it because you went through the steps of analyzing the position. So that's what I want you guys to come away with today. I hope that, again, I hope you're all doing well. I know these are very weird times we're living in, and like I said in the last video, you know, one silver lining of all this is that, you know, if you want to, you have a lot of time to really practice and analyze these positions and get better at chess. And I promise, you know, when you guys make this move in a chess game, it feels really cool. It's like you feel, and when you go from being just as kind of a standard player who knows how to move the pieces and how to, you know, the general ideas, how to open the game, how to deliver a checkmate, you know, that's all well and good. But when you can do this, your game just shoots up, and it's so much more fun. You know, the chessboard sort of comes alive when you get the ability to find these moves. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I'm going to make one more bonus video for you guys. I want to show you guys in the next video I'll release here in the next couple weeks. I want to show you guys a demonstration of a real chess game played between, probably I'll find a game between two good players, but not so far above our level that we can't understand. And I'm going to break down how they move and you know how it relates to our lessons that we've been taught, and just show you guys the principles in action, you know, played between two high-level players. So that's the video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.